Hello and welcome. It is great to have you here. We are streaming on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and even Twitch. If you're a marketer or an entrepreneur who's looking to tell a story that sells, then boy, have I got a treat for you today. We're going to be talking about how you can generate more demand and accelerate your sales pipe with storytelling. And we're going to teach you how to do this without having to learn any specialist, confusing entertainment frameworks. And you know what I mean. If you've ever come across the details of the hero's journey or Pixar's tips or Kurt Vonnegut's tips or the 7 types of story, you know what I'm talking about. You also know that great storytelling can be great for your business, but it's hard to find the time to become a master storyteller. You're busy running your business. You don't have time to go and learn how to write a novel or how to make a movie. And most of the advice that any of us find out there when we try and apply storytelling in our businesses is this type of advice. But I'm looking to change that. And we've got some great content for you today. And we've got for 2 types of people who are going to be covered by this. So if you're a completely new to storytelling, if you're not confident in your storytelling at all, then we're going to help you get going with that today. And if you're already confident as a storyteller, then we're going to give you some tools to help you deeply connect your storytelling to your business. And the tips that we've got for the noobs, if you will also help you repeatably apply storytelling for business. And I'm super excited because in the next 60 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that business storytelling is the key to unlocking unrealized business profitability and unlocking a lot of the challenges that you have in your business today. And I'm going to show you my proprietary frameworks that are going to help you do just that. As a marketer and entrepreneur myself, I know how much frustration there can be in business. For over 20 years in corporate America, I had a variety of marketing roles. I was even chief storyteller for a business division of Microsoft. And for the past 5 years, I've led the charge at Go Narrative, where our mission is to help spread the word of storytelling in business because we know that that brings amazing results when it's applied. But for years, and even as a passionate storyteller, I struggled to apply storytelling in business. There's so much that you've got to manage. You just don't have the time to also bring storytelling into the picture. And you might feel that you don't have that time, and we're going to change that today. You also might think that you need to be focusing on every single marketing channel for fear that you'll fail if you don't check all those marketing boxes, or that you haven't gotten on the latest social media platform when you need to. You actually don't need to worry about these things first. What you need to get right is your business storytelling. When you get that right, whatever channel you go through is going to be more impactful and is going to help you get more and better results. So like many of you, I once thought that storytelling was reserved for movies, books, and theater. And whilst I've always appreciated good storytelling, my career was actually built through science and technology. I didn't think stories had much to do with those fields at all. However, I came to learn that storytelling itself props up everything in business, for every business in every industry. And yes, communications and marketing is a part of that, but it's actually even more than that. Things like internal alignment, employee motivation, and even partnerships are all deeply affected by storytelling and how good or bad your storytelling is. My mother was a scientist, a biologist focused on zoology and virology. She taught me and my sisters to ask questions, to develop hypotheses, to test our ideas, and to seek data and truth. She was also a poet and an author. My father reinforced this kind of duality as an electrical engineer who also enjoyed a sales and marketing career in the high-tech industry that spanned a full 5 decades. He inadvertently indoctrinated me into the world of tech, Intel specifically to start off with. I grew up surrounded by tales of Silicon Valley, some pretty wild ones, I can tell you. And I highly recommend Accidental Empires. It's a fun read, how the boys of Silicon Valley made their millions, battled foreign competition, and still couldn't get a date, by Robert X. Cringely. Stories from the 80s and the early 90s that are absolutely fascinating and bring a completely different view to Silicon Valley than you might have today. My father's influence actually resulted in me getting a computer science degree, but we were also saturated in story from an early age. Both my parents read to us voraciously. I still have fond memories of being curled up on the settee with Dad and one of my sisters as he read us Lord of the Rings. This is the actual copy, my mum's 1969 edition, the first edition where all the Lord of the Rings books were published together. So I took this passion for science and technology, and also followed my mother's footsteps into creative writing and my father's footsteps into the technology industry when I started my career at Intel. Any fans of Red Dwarf in the audience? This is a 2002 photo from an Intel Counter-Strike gaming event that I helped manage at the Science Museum in London. And for those Red Dwarf fans, that is Rimmer, just without the H on his head. So in those early days of my career, I thought storytelling was best suited for presentations and ad campaigns and, of course, messaging. I didn't actually explicitly see it as being something that could be used across the entire business. But something else that I was fascinated with, and still am to this day, was Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. It was a popular read at Intel. And I love how it framed the chasm as being this gap where companies would fall into if they failed to connect with the early majority and with their potential customers in the early majority. It really became a North Star for me, if for nothing else, about connecting a product to the market, the most lucrative market, is really what business is all about, that long-term success of business. And storytelling is about connecting people to ideas. So I was starting to get this sense of this relevance between these two kind of ideas. And without realizing it, I actually started to apply storytelling to my everyday work. In one early instance, I created this channel superhero theme for a partner account channel training program that we had. And in another, I created a James Bond style sales campaign. Eventually, efforts such as these led to me being recruited as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics, just as I was planning on leaving the company. Wow, I thought, it's all official. I was actually going to get paid to be a storyteller. Finishing off those 2 science fiction novels can wait for a little bit longer. Little did I realize that the journey that I was embarking on would actually result in me being able to help others unlock a big business secret. And that is, storytelling isn't about entertainment storytelling. This is about business storytelling. Now, whilst these two ideas may be related and have a common ancestor in story, they're different. And I'm going to share with you why and why it's different and how you can harness that and use that in your business. At Intel, a friend and mentor of mine, Nick Drew, once said to me, always see if you can find if somebody else has done it before. It'll save you time and energy. In other words, don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. And I've always kept that in mind, keeping an eye out for existing approaches I could leverage in my work. And as a newly minted chief storyteller, I sought to do the same. So I went out there and I went on the hunt for existing models. But honestly, I struggled. I couldn't really find anything that was appropriate. I discovered that people had been trying to apply storytelling to business as a way to cross the chasm, but there was a problem with how they were approaching it. Everyone leans into entertainment-based storytelling. Now, to be clear, there's some really interesting advice out there that uses storytelling and advice that I discovered at the time. In that exploration, I found some great, really cool approaches like Nancy Duart's for improving presentations. I love it. I have a signed copy. And techniques like Bo Eason's telling your personal story for impact, all about personal branding. As I dug into these various methods and classic storytelling models, like the ones we showed earlier on, I just couldn't find the wheel that I was looking for. The available storytelling frameworks, there was something wrong with them. They'd really been created for a different goal. And that goal was pure entertainment. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey can be 10, 12, or even a whopping 17 steps. Phrases like rising and falling action, character arc. It's just too much of a heavy lift for professionals who've already got a lot on their plate. So no matter how many rabbit holes I went down, I just couldn't find a storytelling wheel that would work for that repeatable application of storytelling in business. Now, as Chip and Dan Heath explain in their wonderful book, Made to Stick, we're all subject to this thing called the curse of knowledge. This curse basically makes it hard for somebody outside of our area of expertise to understand what we simply just get. If you've ever tried to describe your business to your grandmother, you'll know what I'm talking about. Storytelling is no different. People get into it and they either become an expert or they get scared off. And that scared off happens a lot when it comes to business. And I'm trying to change that. I want everyone in business to be able to use storytelling. I want you to be able to use storytelling for your success. The entertainment storytelling frameworks that I was finding just didn't roll when it came to business. And at the time, I started to ponder maybe I needed to create something, but I had a job to do. So I decided to focus on the essence of storytelling, and I would use those entertainment structures, and I would be a story interpreter. I'd have a focus on outside-in customer centricity, a focus on the customer as a hero in their journey to hopefully purchase from us. My team and I created some terrific customer showcase films that focused on this experience and focused on the customers. And it reinforced for me how powerful storytelling was, but it also reinforced the issue. Not all content was a beautiful video. Not all stories have to be big and bold. Not all stories have to be an epic. The power in story structures wasn't just about those big, beautiful, epic stories. There's something fundamental there that if we can figure it out and harness it, we can put to use in many other places. Storytelling is how we as humans connect. And since the last time I checked, business is still human to human, I realized that storytelling played an essential role in that connection. Externally, in connecting to the customer and to partners. Internally, connecting individuals and teams together, running thought experiments, doing problem solving, building alignment, and much more. I was starting to experience the broader impact of storytelling on business, but I really felt like I was just scratching the surface, and I wanted to go further than just injecting elements of story into traditional marketing. And whilst there's value and use for those, I wanted to go beyond the big, beautiful, epic stories. I knew that there was something more there. So I started to focus and explore what actual business storytelling wheels might look like. I was inspired to take my experience in my corporate role outside and start my own company and put all my energy into helping business people with storytelling. But I had a young family at home. My wife was on sabbatical from her career after the birth of our second child. He's a bit older than this now. Quitting wasn't an option. Everything changed for me on July the 19th, 2015. Tragedy struck when my parents were both killed in a car crash. Now, I won't go any further into this sad tale today, but the fact that life is short was never more apparent to me. And unsurprisingly, it was a major turning point in my life. And it was against that backdrop of profound grief that I decided to leave Microsoft. What on earth was I thinking? So I honored my parents in the best way I know how, helping others find success in their businesses through the power of storytelling. And that's why I formed Go Narrative, to create the storytelling wheels so that you don't have to. Now, the truth is, you don't need to check every single marketing box and the latest fancy social media channel. What you need to focus on is better storytelling. Storytelling lights everything up. Remember that big misconception that we've touched on, that storytelling is for children, movies, and books, and that's it? Well, it's not. Those are artifacts of what storytelling is really all about. And really, it's beyond the telling. It's about story. It's about the story structures. It's about how our brains work and how our society works. And if some artifacts can be used for pure entertainment, some can be used for business engagement. And when you apply storytelling in the right way, you're more authentic. Your messaging is better. Your executives are more relatable. Your sales team are more confident. And you generate increased demand and then accelerate that demand through the sales pipe and increase its velocity. So when you do this, there's also this other magical thing happens when you truly embrace storytelling. Everything is more aligned and has greater integrity. That then has a knock-on effect to the customer experience. Sounds pretty good, right? So I had seen this power and I wanted to spread the word. The entertainment frameworks are so hard to apply in business. I really want to save you that hassle. But even after forming Go Narrative, I actually continued to have to rely on existing frameworks as I worked to forge new ones for you. So I decided to focus on the concept that we call a strategic messaging foundation. My product marketing experience fueled our value proposition development, positioning messaging frameworks, personas, customer journeys, and even content strategies for those persona journeys. Selling these things was great. It was a great place to start, and we made good money doing it, and we still do it to this day. But the crown jewel I was still seeking to unlock was business storytelling. Literature and film have their own frameworks, a bit on the complex side for business, and they're just artifacts as well as the stories, the movies, and the books. They're just artifacts. They're not storytelling. They're a form of story. And story is more, and storytelling is more than movies and books. It's how we make sense of the world. And you want your customers to make sense of you, I'm guessing, right? But without simple, practical business frameworks, all there was these entertainment frameworks. Therefore, I continued to play that role of interpreter. That's when something interesting happened. The more I practiced the art and the science of storytelling, the more I realized that storytelling, business storytelling, was a value problem. In fact, all of storytelling is. And for business, is nothing if it's not about value and bringing and delivering that value to customers. Now, for our ancestors, stories of value were told around the campfire. Value is things like which berries were edible, where the shelter was, if there were wolves in the woods, right? Evolution did its thing and rewarded with survival the tribes that practiced the most effective form of problem solving and communication. It just so happened to be storytelling. Now, there are a few important things that people get wrong with business storytelling. There's a couple sins, in fact. The first sin is not including people and their transformation. This holds true when the story is short form content as well. It doesn't have to be the Epic of Gilgamesh to be communication that uses the precepts and the concepts of story to be more effective. I thought back to a time in corporate America. I was sitting in this crowd of employees. This executive was taking the stage. It was his coming out party as his CMO. The crowd was buzzing, and he gets up on stage and he goes, "We have a great story." Crowd was buzzing. We all leaned in, and I'll tell you what it was. Our products work great together. Our new SKUs and pricing are exactly what our customers need. Okay, I waited for a story. There was no story. And this is exactly the sort of example that I was seeing about story being abused. People were saying story or storytelling, and it was really a product strategy or a marketing priority. It wasn't a story. And when you focus just on logic and argument, you inspire your audience to argue with you. And I was, in my mind, arguing with him at the time. Stories are about people, they're overcoming of obstacles, about transformation. This is the why of storytelling. And language is important. Words are important. When this brand released in the UK in the 1990s, it caused quite a stir. French Connection UK is what it stands for. But what did you see when you looked at this slide? Don't say it's a story if it's not a story. You're doing yourself a disservice and you're leaving money on the table. So what's that second sin? Well, the second sin is actually kind of the opposite, and that is not including a what, an element of value in your story. Just fluffy stories are of no use. And in fact, they're not even really a story. The whole point of storytelling is delivering an element of value, delivering valuable information. It's about not just the heart, but it's also about the head. And when you do this, your audience can then act on that transformation that leads them to a better life. And guess where they see that for the first time? They see it simulated in a story and the stories that you tell them. Now, when we hear a story, we actually simulate those events in our minds. It teaches us how to create similar real-world experiences, and it shows us how life can be better. I absolutely love this quote from Jonathan Gottschall. Fiction is an ancient virtual reality technology that specializes in simulating human problems. But as I discovered, it's difficult to apply entertainment storytelling structures to business, right? It's kind of a triangle, peg, round hole kind of situation. You might get so far, but using it repeatedly as a multi-tool for your business, it's not going to fly. The dream was real. What if I could forge story frameworks specifically for business people? My mother's earliest memory was her grandfather, my great-grandfather, taking her and her two sisters down to his smithy. He was a blacksmith, and he let them hold the hammer as he helped them hit the hot metal. The sparks flew, the smoke filled the air. He helped them lift up the horseshoe and thrust it into the water to temper it, then back into the flames to heat it up, and then hit it with the hammer again, crashing it down onto the metal. The forging of things takes work. In that scenario, you've got the hammer, you've got the horseshoe, you've got the flame, the water, the anvil. And if I could create the anvil and the hammer and the flame for you, then you wouldn't have to do as much work. And so it was through these experiences that I forged these frameworks. And ultimately, I was on this mission to find a way to simplify and ultimately unlock storytelling for business, to do so in a way that's accessible, that you can use every day. And I did it. I created a set of tools to enable business people to find success through storytelling. And here's the kicker, without having to rely on any of those entertainment frameworks. Simple, accessible, repeatable. Quite frankly, relatable as well. So remember that constant flow of new channels like TikTok and Clubhouse. And the reality is no matter the medium, the message needs to use storytelling to be effective, because people rely on storytelling to make sense of the world. And so if you don't communicate within a story or use story structures, you're forcing your audience to do more work. And if they have to do more work, they're more likely to go somewhere where they don't have to do as much work. And that could be to your competition. When I was playing that story interpreter role to help our clients, I discovered Paul Smith and his CAR framework, context, action, results, from his book Lead with a Story. Great book, by the way. So with Paul, I'd found the first story structure that wasn't explicitly tied to an entertainment framework. And I liked CAR, but it wasn't quite enough. In the end, my realization was quite simple. Stories are like salt. Salt is elemental. Without salt, food is bland. Some people even think watermelon is improved with salt. But if you're going to give me the option of a dessert that includes salt, I'm probably going to go with salted caramel ice cream. Personally, that's just me, maybe. You want your message to be tasty, though, right? Stories make everything tastier. So I wanted to create a tool as simple as salt, something anyone in business can add to their communications dishes. And you know what? None of these tools, channels, or features matter an iota if they're not tasty. Storytelling is an essential element, just like salt. Don't prioritize the channels. Prioritize storytelling, then the channels. And in so doing, you will unlock the ability to be more effective through all of those channels. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Matthew, too much salt is a bad thing. Yes, it is. And that is exactly why entertainment storytelling structures fail in business. They bring too much salt. To avoid that, I prioritize focusing on three things. Put the customer in as the hero, using personas to guide our understanding. Make sure that we were demonstrating the overcoming of challenges for those personas, and focus less on the products and services and more on those people or those personas, their lives, and how those lives are impacted. If you do nothing else, do this. It'll keep you outside in honest. We use this approach along with my storytelling interpreter role to craft sales presentations, websites, and other content after we founded the company. These are some real examples, in fact. And we did this whilst I was working on crafting these salt simple tools for business storytelling. And it was some awesome work. And in fact, we brought our strategic narrative product in as a part of this go-to-market playbook, accompanied by value props, positioning frameworks, personas, buyer journeys, content strategies, and more. The cool thing about all those pieces, like the personas, the positioning, is that they're actually some of the components of a business story. And so this strategic messaging foundation work ultimately was the key that enabled me to figure out how to rewrite storytelling for business. When our clients invested in our playbooks, they see real results. A mid-sized IT firm here in the Seattle area saw consistency and unity with all of their efforts across marketing, sales, and their consulting delivery. A corporate client saw over 40% increase in registrations for their event series. They took it to the next level. And another corporate client saw campaign landing page improvements. Their inbound from search impact was almost 4x page view increase. And the actions taken on those pages when people came to them was over 7 times as much when they deployed this approach. The whole point of these frameworks is for those practical uses, tools that you can use every day, that we can use with you to help you stand out. And that's what we love doing, making what you do and say interesting so it does stand out, finding better ways to connect with your customers. And I found all this through storytelling. And it's no surprise. Our brains are wired for it. Our society is built on it. Okay. So where we live in Seattle, surrounded by water, the archipelago of Puget Sound has over 170 islands. My wife and I fantasize about living on one. In fact, this week, there's been some crazy stuff happening with the ferry system here in Seattle area. So recently we saw a house go for sale on Vashon Island. It checked a lot of the boxes that we'd be interested in. So we booked time to see it that weekend, packed the family into the car, and headed to the ferry terminal. It was a new construction, but it had issues. There was all sorts of warning signs. Now, I've owned three homes, been a renter in many more. My parents owned a 450-year-old farmhouse, so I know the work that it goes into a house. But I also know that if you have good bones, good foundation, a good frame, then your house could last 450 years. The house on Vashon, it wasn't going to last 450 years. It was peppered with all sorts of warning signs. And it reminded me the importance of a great framework, a great foundation. It's built on a couple of key things. Well, for a start, it needs a foundation, right? It needs to be simple, otherwise it won't get used. And it has to be practical so that you can apply it repeatably. If you get your storytelling right, you don't have to worry as much about the channel or the marketing method that you're using. The right business storytelling framework will help you get attention, be heard, and result in action being taken, which often is somebody buying from us, right? So if you get that foundation and frame right, that's the priority. By the way, that house eventually sold for 20% less than its market price, and at a time when all of the homes were getting bid up by 20%, and it went the wrong way. Storytelling is this communications multi-tool. And the good news is you don't need all the latest tools and channels. Whatever platform you use, if you can get your storytelling right, then all of those channels become tastier. And it's that secret that I'm about to share. In fact, it's 3 secrets. So one false belief that I've seen is, okay, Matthew, storytelling may be a powerful way to communicate. It may be entertaining, but it's just too hard to apply to business. Every time I try and apply the hero's journey in my marketing, it's just too complicated. There's too much to remember, too much lift, too much process. I've got enough to worry about already. That leads us to secret number 1, a quick and easy story hack that's going to help you increase profitability without learning all the nuances of entertainment storytelling. That leads me to another false belief that I hear, and that is, okay, I get it. I understand how to tell a basic story, but I still can't seem to create stories that work. My stories don't have a heart. I have so many product benefits and features to get across. I just can't find, let alone fit in, realistic emotions that make sense for my audience, that will make my story interesting and appeal to both the head and the heart. Hence, secret number 2, a way to build and tell confident business stories that connect with the hearts and the minds of your customers. There's a third false belief that we hear as well. I get it, but I just can't get the support, the funding, the political clout. I can't seem to show how storytelling connects to our business, or how all these stories connect together so that we can be pulling in one direction. And that leads us to secret number 3, telling the right story to connect your audience to your product, to your business, to move them to act, and also internally to get the support that you need to deploy storytelling effectively in your business. So let's talk about secret number 1. Get out pen, paper, get ready to take some notes, because I'm going to lead you through our first framework. Remember, we didn't want to go into entertainment storytelling. We're avoiding that. We're focusing on business storytelling. And I couldn't find any of those how-tos, right? Couldn't get that wheel to roll about all the stuff I was finding out there. And these hero's journey and all this stuff was just too much salt. It wasn't working. And I knew that if I could forge the right framework, it would become that foundation for our client work and our own work as well. Forging frameworks is obviously tricky, but the good news is you don't have to go through all those steps. You don't have to try and apply the entertainment stuff. You don't have to read all the books that I've read. You don't have to do all the experimentation that I've done either. You can take what we've provided and apply it in business. We've done it all for you. So you can focus on that. You can focus on picking up the hammer and crashing it down on the horseshoe on the anvil, rather than having to worry about creating the anvil and the hammer as well. Now, the thing is, I did want to retain the interest and excitement that comes from the entertainment frameworks. And I believe frameworks, the right frameworks, can be empowering and unleash creativity. There's 5 primary colors, but just look at all the art in the world. There's 12 notes on a scale. Look at all the music. Stories define our world. When you're in control of your company's story, you hold the world in your hands, even if you don't think you're a natural born storyteller. It's a communications multi-tool for internal alignment, for pitching your ideas to your boss, exploring product strategy, crafting product positioning, even defining the strategic narrative of your entire company. And of course, for campaigns and messaging. When you get that foundation right, you go beyond the telling, right? As I was saying earlier, it's about story. This isn't just about storytelling. And if you get story right, your telling is going to be more effective as well. And there was these frameworks Campbell and Snyder had come up with for novelists and screenwriters. I want you to use storytelling in business. Your craft, however, is your unique business, your unique skill set. Your craft isn't necessarily storytelling, and even natural-born storytellers can benefit from structures designed for business because it helps with the practical application. Business, we got to do stuff every day. We got to get stuff done. And if something's too hard to use, we're not going to use it. People should be able to enjoy living in a beautiful home with no worries about the state of the foundation, safe in the knowledge that it was well built, and we've built it for you. Okay, are you ready for it? That first framework, here it is, our 3D story framework. It's practical, it's straightforward. It helps you see your story from all angles. I was greatly inspired by Nike's Just Do It tagline. They pack so much punch into 3 words. All that important stuff into such a tiny amount of real estate, and it triggers a story inside of our minds. We fill in the gaps. This isn't the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? This is business storytelling. This is a tagline. This is 3 words. Yet you hear this, I hear this, Michael Phelps hears this. Different people are going to fill in those blanks in a different way. For me, Just Do It is about getting up off the settee and going to the swimming pool. Michael Phelps, also a swimmer, a little bit more of an impressive swimmer than I am. His Just Do It when he was back in the day, going for that 28th gold medal. But it triggers a story. And I wanted to do that with a 3D story framework. The 3D story framework stands for desire, difficulty, denouement. Look, in a nutshell, people, your customer, the hero in this case, if you will, they want something. You, me, we want something. Desire. But life isn't easy, is it? Things stand in the way. They crop up as we try getting through it. That's difficulty. And I chose this fancy French word, denouement, because of a couple of reasons. Number one, I love it as a metaphor because its literal definition means the untangling of the knot. What a wonderful metaphor. I just absolutely love it. And the second aspect is because it's got some value, there's some data, there's some head in there as well as the heart, you're actually more likely to remember it alongside that desire, difficulty, denouement. Even if you can't remember how to pronounce it, you'll think there was that fancy French word that meant the untangling of the knot. And boom, that's now in your head. How was it untangled? With what? Was a specific approach you used? Was your product or service used? In my story journey, I've come across the importance of contrast, change, and transformation all the time, right? And including that tipping point I told about earlier. But I also realized that every single business decision, big or small, is actually a transformation. And if people can understand the why and how of another's solution to that transformation, they could be persuaded to follow the same path. That, in its essence, is the power of storytelling. Getting people to do something. Just do it, right? So we designed this to be deceptively simple, a rich microcosm of detail that you could use to remember and then decode your stories, starting simple as you needed to, and then going deeper as you got more into storytelling. And if you never got in deeply into it, you could still remember this and still use it. And for years as a story interpreter for business, I know if you pull on the right threads, you extract what's needed to construct a story. And this framework will help you extract exactly what you need. A good story puts you at the center, and these 3 words just do that. They tease a transformation, and they do it in such a way that you can extract all the details that you need. Should come as no surprise that we use this 3D story framework in our business every day, in our own marketing and our sales conversations, and also to understand prospective clients. For our clients, we use it for many things, but here's a great example of a landing page above the fold copy that utilizes the 3D framework. I'm going to have to bring a video example of this in next week because we've got a really great video that I'd love to share with you as well. But we also use it as a practical tool, breaking down value propositions based on real customer stories, creating train the trainer guides with an outside-in perspective, and of course, coaching our clients on how to easily and repeatedly tell storytelling, even when we're not in the room. And obviously, when we are in the room, we use it to go even deeper. And again, without the baggage of entertainment story structures. Now, while it may be true that we're all natural-born storytellers, it's also true that it's different spinning a yarn about your day versus writing the strategic narrative for your company. The latter is a little bit more difficult. I love this quote from Ben Horowitz. Storytelling is important. It does take work, but my mission is to take as much of that work off of your plate as possible so you can start benefiting from business storytelling today. And with the 3D framework, you've got this easy on-ramp to understanding and applying storytelling. I'm excited at its simplicity because it means that it's easier for you to remember. And if it's easier for you to remember, it's easier for you to practice. We finally found a way to make using storytelling more accessible to business people. I mean, seriously, remember those other frameworks, the hero's journey? This is a lot simpler. Okay, great. So you've got your story structure down. You're starting to riff out some stories. Stories need emotion. We need to feel the story. Remember earlier I was talking about that framework to infuse emotions. Well, here's our framework that helps you do that. And ultimately, emotions are an essential ingredient for moving people to act or to buy from you. I got a frog in my throat there. We want you to feel confident creating stories with an emotional punch. Now, while you might get this, if you do go through the detailed hero's journey, it's just too much, right? We don't want to put all that on your plate. I experienced that in my time as a story interpreter. And I've agonized over this in the stories that we've created for our clients, and I don't want you to agonize over it. And in fact, it was through that agonizing that I developed the framework I'm about to share. But when we delivered our first strategic narrative back in the day, like 4 years ago, this was all implicit for me. And that first time we shared the strategic narrative, it was about this eagle soaring over the landscape, bird's eye view. Would they love it? Luckily, they did. But I wanted to make sure that we had a process to do this repeatedly and so that you could also go and do it repeatedly. So back to my gran. I was lucky enough that in her twilight years, she lived in the same village as my parents. So when I would come back from university, I got to see her. And when I came back from university, I'd often complain about what a tough time I was having. I struggled at university. Maybe it was my bright, shiny object syndrome. Maybe it was my ADHD and dyslexia. Either way, I found university difficult. One day on a visit back home, I stopped by my grand's to have a cup of tea. Ain't no party like my nana's tea party. Some of you might get the Flight of the Conchords reference here. If you don't get it, and if you haven't seen Flight of the Conchords, you should. It's hilarious, and there's a whole bunch of great content and shows that have come out of it, like What We Do in the Shadows, and even some of the Marvel movies. So Matthew, she said, if degrees were easy, they would hand them out after A-levels. It's the equivalent of the last 2 years of high school in the UK. But she was right. It made me think about my mum's forge story. And no, I didn't spill the beans to my gran about my mum in the smithy, but I kept her comments in mind. Nothing worth working for as a handout. But if I could do the bulk of that hard work, the forging for you, to help you inject emotion into your business stories, I could get you to story success more quickly. So I wanted to make sure that I was creating the anvil and the hammer as well. So remember, entertainment story frameworks, complex detailed structures, we're not going to be there, but we do recognize that why they exist. But the problem is complexity hampers creativity. Remember, 5 primary colors, 12 notes examples. You don't need complexity to create diverse, amazing things. A complex framework can distract from one of those critical elements, and that's emotions. When you're so wrapped around the axle of the details and you're getting down into the cursed knowledge, trying to figure stuff out, the emotions will frequently go out the window. So it was during the early days of COVID, it hit me. I felt the framework coming on, right? The importance of the right emotion in business stories became more important than ever. We were helping our clients with it. We were trying to do our best part to keep calm and carry on and deeply respect the complex emotional landscape of the time. Speaking of emotions, our family loves Star Wars. Originals, prequels, sequels, toys, you name it. We have more Star Wars Lego than you can shake a stick at. I've even met George Lucas twice. It's another story though. Ping me, I'll tell you about it. I remember reading an article about the lightsaber battles in Star Wars and how the actors often had to practice something they'd never done before. Most of them weren't sword fighters. Some of them were though. Each character did bring their inimitable style to the sword play. It wasn't just parry, block, and slice. There was an art and emotion to it, and each character was different. Christopher Lee played the character of Count Dooku. Now, swordplay wasn't new for Christopher Lee. In fact, he had been playing with swords on the silver screen before many of us were born. Here he is in 1973's The Three Musketeers. In his case, his classic, elegant style was integrated into his Star Wars character. And to breathe life into a story, you must infuse technique and science with character, art, and emotion, just like Christopher Lee breathed life into Count Dooku's lightsaber battling style. The place to start is by asking yourself, what truths is the transformation or change in the world forcing on your customers? Now, the good news is I've created a way for you to work through this and to bring those emotions out to include in your storytelling. Better yet, you don't have to be a creative or literary movie genius to do so. We've created something for you to do this, and I'm excited to share it. You're excited to see it. Okay. We call this the story meet method. If you understand what moves people, you can craft things that move them, result in action. And emotions are key to this. With Meet, you don't need to maintain all those steps of the hero's journey to figure out what the right emotional response is. It's a simple hack to help you find emotions to focus on in your story. The morals are your customer's perspective on the good, the bad, or the indifferent. You could also think of these as values, essential emotions, the feelings that exist for your audience around the topic at hand, and the truths, the concepts the audience holds dear and are central to their decision-making, regardless of the topic. Things are just a certain way sometimes, right? So the Meet method is a way for you to, it's your iceberg hack to bring those emotions into your business. Now, because not all emotions are created equal. And the problem is if you don't really put any thought into it, or you don't have a framework to help with it, you're going to be thinking about basic emotions like happiness and sadness, and they're not specific enough. You must look at the context of your audience. Look at that landscape. Look at how the transformation's affecting them. Your morals shape and guide human beings' behavior, businesses' behavior, culture, office locations, affiliations, all affect that moral landscape and how people view the world, and even collaboration culture within a company. Essential emotions ooze out of interactions in business. Think about your career and think about how you felt about your career, the elation at success of a promotion of a successful product launch, the fear of having done a career snafu, or of having some political strife at work, or having a campaign that's not performing. And truths frame up a business. And there we go. I'm just, powering through a bunch of slides here by pressing the wrong button. Who hasn't done that, right? So ultimately, morals shape and guide. Okay, there we go. That's clearly not working out. So I just carry on going here. But really, when you use the story meet method, you can start to pull on the complex cardigan of emotions, and in no time, you'll have unraveled the secret that you're looking for. So getting the emotions right in your storytelling builds empathy. Empathy creates the conditions for engagement. So I'm excited to share this simple framework with you so you can unlock emotions in your business storytelling. And there's no greater success that I get when we affect people's lives and our clients say things like Hannah from Ann Plus did. This sort of quote is the sort of response we go for. And again, showing how important emotions are in business. Now, remember earlier when I said, okay, so we've got a framework that not just helps you tell the right stories, but to bring consistency to the stories, build internal alignment, deeply connect your storytelling to your business and your business priorities. We're going to go through that framework now. So have you ever tried to learn about storytelling? The why of storytelling? This might be your first day, but if you've tried it before, you've gone out there and you've had a bit of a search, there's precious little out there, let alone through actual stories. Seriously, go and Google storytelling and hit I'm lucky, right? That page that comes up is probably going to be this HubSpot article. Don't read it now, but save it for later. Now, not to throw HubSpot under the bus, but when you read it later, keep an eye out for a few things. Is it structured on story? Is there a story to be seen anywhere in it? I'm sure you realize by now why I went on this mission, and I've got a lot more work to do. And hopefully you'll be coming on this journey with me. The power of story goes far, far beyond the content of storytelling and far beyond the telling. We can use it to shape the world. Remember, when I mentioned the founding of Go Narrative, well, I was sitting with my wife on the sofa talking about what to call the company, and we landed on Go Narrative for two reasons. Firstly, I wanted to convey action. Come on, business is about action. We want people to buy from us, right? So hence the word go. And then we also recognize the fact that storytelling, telling is only one part of this whole kind of picture, and that storytelling isn't just about storytelling. There's a way to tie all of this together, and it's rooted in the business. And that goes beyond storytelling. It's the big picture, it's narrative. And the big picture is important because it's the big story that shapes all the stories that you're going to tell. For example, take your favorite movie. It's a collection of stories that accrue up to an overall narrative of the film. I had two fundamental questions when it came to this. Firstly, how do we create authenticity by tying all of these stories together with a golden thread? Okay, so we just talked about the movie example. What about in business? All the stories in a business, how do we tie that together so that big story makes sense? And this led me to an even more profound question. How do we ensure that the stories we tell are the correct stories? Stories that matter for the business, that drive action, whilst feeding that authenticity that's so essential for customer experience. Hope you're starting to see that businesses have different demands on storytelling than movies and books, even with their similarities. And it was in the early days of solving the business storytelling problem that I became hooked. I spent a lot of time geeking out storytelling. You might recall how I kept running into problems trying to get the business to benefit from storytelling when I was back at Microsoft, right? Trying to get my general manager to remember the stages of the hero journey. It didn't go well. I don't recommend you try and do it. And a lot of that was why I came on this journey in the first place. I recognized that it just wasn't working. Most business people just don't have the time, right? Let alone when you start trying to do storytelling and you're trying to figure out, how do I connect the stories in my products, my marketing campaigns, sales plans, partner events, office politics even? How do I make sure that these are all aligned and there's some kind of consistency to it? How do I make sure that this is all connected to what we're trying to do as a business? You can see why people just end up running away from storytelling because of this. There's a lot to think about. If you don't have a structure and if you don't know where to get started, then you're never going to be able to get started and never going to get there. This is where that storytelling paradox manifests. Storytelling isn't just storytelling. And if you focus just on the telling, you're not getting the most out of the true power that we're talking about here. The driving force behind storytelling, story, is how our brain works, and precisely how it works in relation to getting along and getting ahead in society, as Will Storr says in his wonderful book, The Science of Storytelling. Remember, even with this thing that is so natural and simple that we use it every day, just like salt, yet people try the entertainment frameworks, they fail, they give up, the salt gets spilt. And in most cases, people only dabble, sprinkle a little story into some presentations and content, inject a bit, if you will, as well, I mentioned earlier. I want to help you get out of the jar, to see the big picture. Think of your favorite movie again, right? These multiple stories that are tied together into the narrative of the film. And there's usually a moral or a metaphor that encapsulates all of it, which is a shortcut to meaning of the film. But when you first watched the movie, you didn't know that. You were in the jar, consuming each story as it was served up to you, being taken on that journey. In The Wizard of Oz, which I recently just read and also showed to my children, the narrative is that one's true purpose is found within oneself. There's no place like home. And Dorothy had what she needed to solve the problem to get home. And in the movie, you might think it's she was there all along, but either way, she had it within herself. The Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion. The Scarecrow wanted a brain, but he's the one who does all the problem solving on the journey. The Tin Man wants a heart, but he's the one who exhibits compassion. And the Lion wanted courage, and he's the one that defended the group on their journey. They had what they sought all along. And this is what the story stands for. This is what the metaphor of the yellow brick road stands for. That power within ourselves to do what we want to do. Speaking of bricks, think at the risk of mixing metaphors, if you think of a brick wall for a second. Now imagine that wall not as multiple bricks, but as a single tall, thin wall made out of fired clay. Such a wall's not made because it's weak. And when we have multiple bricks connected by mortar, it's strong. It's to do with how the forces act on each other from all the bricks. And a narrative is like mortar. It enhances the strength of the stories you tell. It ties all the stories together. And together, they're more robust. What makes up this mortar in business? It's the meaning of the business. We can draw that out. And we do when we craft a narrative. We use it as a shortcut to understanding for our clients, trying to figure out how do we make this easy for our clients, customers to understand them. Those insights come from places like employees, customers, partners, the founders themselves. How does it relate to the changing world, the trends, the facts, the hopes, the dreams, looking at all of that? The transformation that's going on in the world, the relationship with that, the pressure that exerts on companies and people in the world, how they then navigate that to success. These are the raw materials for the themes and connections that inform a narrative. And remember, this is more than storytelling. And this is the problem with the paradox. People see it just for entertainment, like a presentation, which is why most people only get as far as applying storytelling for presentations. They don't see it as something deeply connected to the business. But it is. In fact, your company's strategy is your story. Another Ben Horowitz quote that I love. It's so true. And you know what? He also goes on to say that the output of all the work and the strategy becomes a story. And that's because of story making, right? So you can see why storytelling not only is it the paradox, but it's not enough, right? Story making is a big part of it. And your company is out there in the world helping your customers make better stories in their lives. A strategy without a story is an incomplete strategy. Is your strategy complete, or do you need a strategic narrative? So this is what I was able to uncover, a way to create a strategic narrative rooted in the business, again, without having to rely on entertainment frameworks, and getting more out of storytelling for business than just presentations or messaging. The framework, you ready for it? Okay, so here it is. This is our TRIPS storytelling methodology. It's a way to ensure all those stories have a common foundation. And TRIPS is an acronym. So transformation, what change is going on in the world? How is that affecting companies, governments, people? How is it affecting your customer? This is the why of why you're embarking on this mission in the first place. It's why you invented the new product or developed a new business plan or crafted the campaign that you're working on. R is reasons to believe. There's a head and a heart to this. The head, the market trends, the facts, the proof. The heart, the aspirations, the desired end state that people want to get to. A reason for them to believe. I is innovation. This is your secret sauce, the transformation winning tool. Why you? This is the output of the very pinnacle of your positioning and your value proposition exercise, picking that one key thing and the one key thing that relates specifically to this transformation. P is problems, right? So the transformation imposes problems, there's problems getting started, and there's problems that crop up along the way. And then the stories you tell about this, the stories out there in the world of the transformation, the stories of the innovation of your founders, the stories of problems existing clients had, and the social proof that you can tell in that story about how they overcame it. So looking for stories in each of these areas and using the 3D framework to then craft those stories. Now, you could always roll the dice, but you don't have to. You no longer need to cross your fingers and pray that you have the secret, because you have it now, and you have the secret to doing it every single time. When you craft narratives with this TRIPS storytelling methodology, You will frame your strategy for transformation and how it relates to your market. And you will harvest the proper inputs for your stories. You'll have a golden thread that ties everything together. And then with the 3D framework, you can create stories that connect your narrative consistently and repeatedly to all the stories you tell internally, externally, through marketing, sales, partner, and more. And with the Story Meet method, you can then find the right emotions to create stories to connect and move people to act. The TRIPS storytelling is the framework is our North Star for outside-in focus, consistency, and repeatability. In our business, we use it both internally and also externally. Internally, we use it to shape our own narrative and guide the work we do for our clients. Externally, we use it to diagnose a new client, to understand their business, to craft materials in our coaching sessions with them, to provide that baseline for creating their strategic narrative. We use it in our workshops with our clients to extract all the inputs for the stories that we're going to tell. Prior to this stream, I was literally on a call with a client whose workshop we're doing next week to do this exact thing. We also use it to identify cultural and meta narratives that can be used as narrative metaphors to accelerate understanding, just like the yellow brick road. These narrative metaphors, along with that foundation and stories based on our 3D story framework, are used to craft that strategic narrative. Our customers have achieved things like that 40% increase in registrations for their event series by implementing our complete approach. It's our golden thread, our one ring that binds them all, if you will. And yes, that's also that copy of Lord of the Rings that I shared earlier, my mum's copy from 1969. So after we applied our frameworks, we saw deal sizes 10x, engagements included multiple of our storytelling services, and of course, our favorite deliverable, the strategic narrative. And I'm thrilled. My journey with storytelling went from entertainment stories to the hero's journey to brain science, the cogs of society. I learned that storytelling wasn't just with a telling of stories or even just a way of being interesting and engaging. I learned that there's a process that is fundamentally linked to how our brain works, how we see the world, how we communicate, and even how we solve problems. It fuels our lives and the businesses that we run. I also learned how to align narratives to create a strategic narrative that connects to a human understanding of the world and of your business as a bridge to your product or service. I learned how to use these narratives to intentionally create stories that align and inspire people to act. It's all about action. Now, you have the secret to unlock storytelling success for business. You'll create energy and interest for your programs, your campaigns, your storytelling initiative itself. You'll build alignment. You'll get people on board. And it's on that energy that you can engineer large-scale, meaningful change and run campaigns that convert and trigger that right mix of hormone release at scale. This is storytelling for action. So I have a question for you. If you followed what I showed you in Secret 1, got down with the storytelling, got the structure right, and then applied what I showed you in Secret number 2, made sure that those stories had emotion and heart, and then what I showed you in Secret number 3, made sure all the stories you were telling are deeply connected to your business, aligned with each other, and created in a way that's going to help create a shortcut to understanding. If you did all 3 of those things, do you think you might be able to find more success, generate more demand, accelerate your sales pipe a bit more? Excited, right? I'm excited. This stuff is exciting to me every time I talk about it. There's so much power in it. And I really, 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 really want you to benefit from this as well. Now, you might be excited, but you also might feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. 3 simple frameworks. We've been sharing for about an hour, right? 3 simple frameworks. Can you imagine if this was about some of the entertainment storytelling frameworks, right? Drinking from a fire hose. It's impossible to get everything from a single hour-long presentation. I had a presentation coach once. It was I was getting ready to present at a big event, and the coach said to me, "Matthew, you've got all this knowledge about the product, programs, partner channel, all of this stuff, and you're trying to communicate to your audience, you're never going to be able to communicate everything to your audience in an hour. Your job in that hour is to get them to take a next step, to get them to take a next step on their journey in their story. And it's the same with storytelling. How can you get people to take action? How can you get people to take that next step? And the step I hope you take today is wanting to learn more about storytelling for action. And that's why we're launching the Storytelling for Action pack. And here it is. The Storytelling for Action pack is a set of playbooks, recipes, and ingredients. We've got 14 how-to flows, 6 playbooks, 300 hacks. Therein, you will find all the steps to extract what you need to tell the stories, to build your narrative, to inject that emotion. We've even thrown in playbooks for creating presentations, case studies, and even short form content like tweets or ad campaign taglines, for example. So this is a bit of a little sneak peek of it. Make this a bit bigger so you can see that there. You can see a lot of the workbook. It's all very practical. It's designed to help lead you through this process. This is effectively Go Narrative in a box when it comes to our storytelling work. You take this, you can go and apply it and start finding those results. Now, we even provide in the flow how to create a strategic narrative itself, how to use it, using the TRIPS and 3D framework to do so. So you can be one of the first people to get access to Storytelling for Action by signing up at gonarrative.com/SFA. That's Storytelling for Action, SFA. And you will get all you need to start applying to storytelling in business. Like I said, we've got 6 playbooks, a 12-part course covering all the elements, going through those frameworks, through the workbooks so that you can apply them, teaching you how to apply them, giving you examples, templates that you can use with your team, lifetime access to our clinic. And in fact, this is one of the finalized and dotting and T-crossing that we're doing. We're looking at either Slack or Telegram as being those community spots. And we've already written off Discord as much as it's about community. Don't think that's really appropriate for the business world, not just yet anyway. So love to hear your feedback on that. What would you prefer? Would you prefer Slack, another little Slack channel, Go Narrative, and go in and ask us questions, get answers, bounce ideas off of us and our team? We've also got a bonus in all this, customer advocacy pack, how to build a customer advocacy program, customer case studies, showcases, and references. Our mission is to help you harness the power of story for business without relying on entertainment story frameworks, and Storytelling for Action is how we do that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited for Storytelling for Action. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes now to answer questions. So feel free to hit those up into the chat, in the chat window, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitch or Twitter. You add those comments and we will see them come in right now. But in the meantime, let's see if we have any questions coming in. For somebody that talks about not using entertainment storytelling, you certainly talk about movies and books a lot. True. Do you know what a movie is? It's a shortcut to understanding. And you know what? The reality is the grandparent of all of this stuff, the great-great-great-grandparent of your favorite movie, your favorite book, the great-grandparent of Shakespeare, the great-grandparent of the frameworks, Joseph Campbell's frameworks, Pixar's tips and tricks, the grandfather of every single Pixar movie, the grandfather of the best ad campaigns that utilize storytelling, the grandfather of the communications plan that an executive has that they lead their team through to effectively rally the troops. The grandfather of all of those things is this idea of story, how we view, see, process, understand, communicate about our world. And if you want to make a movie or write a book, go read The Hero's Journey. If you want to make a movie, also go and subscribe to Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. They've got an application that you can use to write an actual story, write an actual script. It's for both movies and TV and books. I don't want to sell them short on the fact you can do all those media. But if you want to write a story for business, pull out the 3D framework, then the meat method. If you want to create alignment and across your stories into your business, pull out the TRIPS storytelling methodology. These have been designed for you to use in business and have been designed to be as simple as possible for you to do so. And by signing up for Storytelling for Action, you'll get access to all of that. And by the way, you'll get the bonus, which is our weekly newsletter. We have weekly tips about storytelling. Right now, we're on a bit of a case study kick, right? So you'll get tips and tricks about case studies. Go up and check out our blogs as well, up on LinkedIn and gonarrative.com/blog. A whole bunch of resources on there that you can use. But the Storytelling for Action puts all of it together in a practical, sequential way so you can extract what you need to create the business stories that you want to create for your business. So that's why we talk about movies and books, shortcut to understanding, and they've all got the same grandparents. Okay, that was a long answer. Right. What do I need to remember about story arcs and the hero's journey? Nothing. Put it to the side. Come back to it when you want to write a book. That's what we were saying. Okay, let's see. What's the biggest mistake people make with storytelling? Well, there's two really. Not understanding it enough to use it effectively. You know, like I said, people say story and they don't mean it. It's like, come on, like language is important, right? So that's one, not understanding it, how to use it effectively. Like that CMO example, seriously. And then the second is pursuing entertainment structures, getting lost, quite frankly, and then giving up, right? Not benefiting from it. So those are two of the biggest mistakes. And if you go back to that first one and kind of look at it, remember I talked about the head and the heart. Right? When you craft a story, it's not just about entertainment, fluffy story stuff, right? It's not a kid's book, right? It's a way of communicating valuable information. And in fact, even the best children's stories deliver valuable information. Little Red Riding Hood is actually about being wary of strangers. It's a story that we tell to help with that. Jack and Jill, a story about collaboration and perseverance. I mean, these stories that we tell, these fairy tales and the stories that we've told around campfires and dining room tables forever, they do contain that element of value. Your business needs to communicate some pretty hefty value, and you need some tools to help you really figure out how you're going to do that. And if you try to use the entertainment frameworks for that, you're just going to get lost. But if you use our frameworks, you're going to be rocking and rolling in no time. More confident storyteller. Your executives will be more confident. Your sales team will be more confident. Everything will be aligned, and you'll be setting yourself up for success. Fantastic. Well, that's it for questions today. Next week, we have we're going to be doing this in the afternoon, but come back next week or the week after. We'll run through this. You can get a refresher. Look, this is a little bit of Storytelling for Action. So if this is all you need to get going, fantastic. And let me know how you get on. But of course, sign up for Storytelling for Action to be some of the first to hear about Storytelling for Action when it's released, when it goes to general availability, if you will. And I look forward to hearing from you and hearing your stories and hearing about your success in harnessing the power of storytelling for business. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you've got something out of this. And I look forward to you also becoming a business storytelling addict. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.